Hey all, welcome back to the channel, and that's right, today is countdown day once again. And you might notice that the display behind me here is looking a little different than usual. Why? Because today we're going to be counting down the top 10 Transformers combiners. Thanks to votes across all of social media by you guys, and that's going to be our topic this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. I hope that life is treating you very well. As always, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you're at it, baby, that's right, man, hit that notification bell. Why? Because it helps me out a ton, and it lets you know when all kinds of content goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, Transformers Collectors, NL, and the Autobot family. And hey, why not take a look at our Patreon and what we offer on Teespring, and have a look for me everywhere across all of social media. But if you've been voting, then you already know where to find me on social media. All the links and whatnot are in the description below. So today we're going to be looking at combiners. It was a fan suggestion from last week, and some time ago I said, you know what, I'm not going to do a combiners countdown because I was thinking in terms of my own personal list, and really I was limiting what I was kind of considering as combiners and limiting my thinking to mostly G1, and really the G1 that I knew. So I decided to open it up. Of course, this is amassed from votes all across social media. Hundreds of votes were cast. Everything from, and a couple here that I'm going to mention, these aren't even in the honorable mentions, but I'm going to mention them because it's amazing where the votes came and what people consider to be combiners, and asked, would this be considered a combiner? Something I think that either creates a new entity and a new consciousness would be a combiner, or when multiple characters, so to speak, are needed to create a certain mode. So something like Reflector, I think, would probably be a combiner. But I don't necessarily think that something like Headmasters or Target Masters would be combiners, because they have a different term. Some people point out specific combiners. There were a whole bunch of customs that people made themselves that got certain votes, which was fine. You were able to vote for that. Shuriken, which is a Dinobot combiner, basically, a third-party Dinobot combiner. He got a couple of votes. Did not make the list, but he certainly got a couple of votes, and I wanted to note it because he specifically got a couple of votes. We had votes come in for everything from Robots in Disguise to Tripredacus and Magnaboss to Elita Infinite, and yes, I am looking at the sheet here with my notes on it, to Armada Optimus Mega Weapon, who I believe was Overload, I think was his name, Optimus and Jetfire, maybe? I think I'm saying that right. What do you want? By the way, some of the members of that, if not all of them, we'll be looking at here in reviews soon on the channel. But we're going to kind of dive into the honorable mentions so that we can get to the main list. Honorable mentions are those that they got votes, but not quite enough to make it to the list. So who's included this time around? Well, we have Road Caesar and Landfill. Both of them got the same number of votes. They did not come close to making it on the list, but they do deserve honorable mentions for the number of votes that they got. We also have Monstructor, who got a few votes, as well as Raiden, and just missing making the list would be JRX or Rail Racer. He almost made it. One more vote, two more votes, and he probably would have managed to make it. So all of those honorable mentions, they're great. I really kind of wished that Raiden and Rail Racer we looked at recently here on the channel. Actually, we looked at the Japanese JRX version recently here on the channel. Still stands up, man, all these years later. Fantastic. Fantastic. We need more trained combiners. It'd be nice to get updates to both of those guys. I'm glad that they got some of the votes, but not quite enough. So who did make the list? Well, we're going to kick things off with actually a tie for number 10. And number 10 on the list is actually a tie. These two got the exact same number of votes. I really could not decide who to include at the number 10 spot and kind of who to give an honorable mention to. And I said it wouldn't be fair since these two had the exact same number of votes. Normally, with the same number of votes, I kind of have them use up, you know, a couple of different spots on the list anyway, and say, hey, these next couple are in no specific order. But this time around, the way that these two fell, they were at the bottom of the list, and the next number up actually does have a higher number of votes. So I thought about what to do, and I decided that I would do it as a tie for number 10. One of them is kind of an oldie and a goodie from G1, and another is sort of G1 based, but kind of came up in recent lore. Who am I talking about? Coming in at number 10 is Abominus and Volcanicus. I'm surprised that the Dinobot combiner known as Volcanicus got as many votes as he did. I didn't particularly think that this was the most successful thing. And the Beast, the other version of a Dinobot combiner that was in the comics many years ago, was never exactly a fan favorite. But this guy certainly was, and admittedly, my version of this guy is actually the Black Mamba set. It's alright, but it definitely is an example of one that benefited heavily from an add-on kit. And I think that the people that voted for him largely have him with the add-on kit. As for Abominus, I've always been an Abominus fan. A lot of people complain about this Abominus saying that it's loose. Mine's fine. He stands fine. It's too bad that some people experience such negativity with this. This is my custom Abominus, which is why he looks different. So going from a new to a classic kind of shows that anything can happen on the countdown list. But number 10 kicks us off with a tie. What about number 9? Number 9, baby, is actually one that I've done as a custom, even though he had an official release. He's even had a pretty fantastic third-party offering. I'm talking about Lio Kaiser coming in at number 9. This is my custom Lio Kaiser with a custom Jaguar and Leozak. I'm working slowly on a custom Death Cobra to go with this, but the Limbots at the very least come from the Platinum Edition Combiner War set. I had one specific vote for TFC Ares? No, not Ares. Hades. Hades. There you go. Hades. And I included it with Lio Kaiser because Hades was not going to get enough votes in and of himself. And I had not specified character or plastic. And a couple of people said, does it matter if it's the, you know, the plastic offering, or is it, you know, got to be the animation? And I said, wide open, man. Right now, it's just favorite combiners. So when I got one for Hades, they said, I guess technically my vote is for Lio Kaiser. And I said, that's what I'll count it as. Hades, by the way, is fantastic. Lio Kaiser. It's too bad that they didn't do a Death Cobra as well. Nevertheless, this is my version of him, along with all of their little Breastmaster partners made out of the cassettes from the Siege line. There's a whole lot of love that went into this. And honestly, because of how formidable he was actually supposed to be and portrayed to be, and because of kind of just the cool overall look, and the dude had like nunchucks if I'm not mistaken, how can he not take the number 9 spot? Number 8 brings us to more familiar territory. So number 8 actually had characters appear on a previous countdown and actually had some votes himself, but not enough to make it onto a previous countdown. Who and what am I talking about? I'm talking about the Protectobots, who make Defensor. While Defensor did not get on the list, though some of the Protectobots did, man, I'm really stumbling over that word. Defensor did get some votes when we looked at the top 10 Transformers with emergency vehicle alt modes not that long ago. The combined form did not quite make it, but it certainly did this time at the number 8 slot. And honestly, I've always been a big fan of Defensor. Now, some people would say, hey, you have Rook down here and you have Groove on the chest. Groove should be a leg. I kind of agree with you. Groove should be a leg. But you know what? I'm cool with this. I'm fine with this. He's a motorcycle. Maybe he shouldn't be as big as the other vehicles. Again, there are certain things about the Combiner Wars version that are a little bit unfortunate. Most notably, how the chest tabs or doesn't really like to tab into the like little rectangular pegs it's supposed to. There have been a few versions of this guy over the years, maybe not enough. I'm glad to have him. I'm glad to have this version. It works for my collection. But undoubtedly, whether you own him or not, whether you have a version of this guy or not, he is stuck in the minds of fans enough that he was able to snag the number 8 spot. And here for number 7, I must admit I don't have anything in hand because I am one of the unlucky few who did not get who number 7 is, that being Piranha-Con, or King Poseidon, if you will. I counted votes for Piranha-Con and King Poseidon together because they're technically the same character. I did not count God Neptune as one of the same, although that being said, God Neptune is the version that I have on pre-order, so if I had him, I would be showing him now to you and saying, hey, I know it's not King Poseidon, but like it's my version of him. I don't know so much if he's as much a favorite as now he is in the minds of a lot of fans and they're voting for him because of his recent Selects release. Regardless, even if that's the reason why, he has a fantastic look, very weird individual alt modes, but is based on a lot of, I think, really cool molds. And besides, how can you not love a team that has a member by the name of Tentakill? That's almost as good as Octopunch. Number 6 flies into our life. That's right, it's Superion. Now, there was one specific vote for the Zeta offering, but I lumped it in with the general Superion voting. And honestly, this is, I think, one of, if not the best from Combiner Wars. I think the Zeta offering is fantastic, but you have to be cool, man, with the parts forming. Some people are, some people aren't. I like the planes, I like the characters, I like this overall character. I always thought he was one of the more interesting and dynamic of the Combiners. I always wished, though, he had a better head sculpt. Like, I wish the animation head sculpt was more like this head sculpt, and I don't think that it was. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that it had as much detail as this. I was happy how this turned out. I don't know which version of the Aerial Bot you have. There's a ton of them out there. Some are being worked on right now. If you're an MP collector, there are some excellent offerings out there. Nevertheless, the character as a whole is remembered and renowned by fans well enough that he kind of took a middle of the list spot. Speaking of middle of the list, hey, wouldn't you know it, we're at the halfway mark. And yes, indeed, here at the halfway mark, we have the character that, if this was my personal list, probably would have come in at number 1, if not number 2. But of course, the votes fall where the votes fall, and this is a character that I often think doesn't get as much attention and love as he probably deserves. Who am I talking about? This guy. This is Computron. Now, this is my custom Computron. This is... I'm so happy to have this. I really am. Now, some people prefer the Unite Warriors version. There are molds there that I'm not a fan of, though I do like the Computron head sculpt there better. I did a lot of custom work on this guy, and I'm even happy to have Scrounge. Computron was so logical-minded, thought everything through, sometimes a little too long, we all know that. But for some reason, he really resonated with me. A lot of people that voted for him kind of like spoke to the fact that not only was he one of the few Autobot combiners, but he was created by Grimlock. How can you not love a combiner that was made by Grimlock? On to number 4. And taking the number 4 slot is one of the most beloved characters and beloved combiners, and often chosen as a favorite of many. Which is kind of ironic since his Combiner Wars offering is well noted as being the absolute worst of that entire line. Come on, think about it, take a second. I'll give you a second. You know where we're going with this. I know you know where we're going with this. Of course I'm talking about Menasor. A lot of people think this was so awful. And I'll admit, the torso, not great. A lot of people are complain and point out problems with the lower legs and the hips and whatnot. That's not my major concern, or wasn't. My major concern were the arms and all of this upper section, because you could not rotate the arm forward without unpegging the Motormaster arm. So I did a ton of custom work. I actually changed out the part of the lower forearms with Battle Core Optimus. I added some paint. I drilled holes and I added extra pegs right there that go into the hands to hold all of that secure. It's solid now, but it obviously shows just how poorly it was designed if that much work had to be done just so you could rotate the arm forward and back. This offering in plastic, not good. Menasor has had a ton of offerings in a ton of size classes, whether you wanted to go with your classics and kind of chug generations display, or whether you wanted to go with your MP display. Nevertheless, regardless of which one you have, as soon as you see that yellow race car on the side, the horned head, and the maroon lad on the other side, you know that you're in for a good time with a bunch of crazy drivers known as the Stunticons, and they're gonna merge to give you one of the absolute fan favorite combiners of all time, Menasor. And for that very reason, he takes the number 4 spot. But of course, that leaves us now with the top 3. And though number 3 might not be number 1, it's still good to be the king. Predaking, if you will. Now, there have been a ton of Predakings. This is mine. This is the Unique Toys Warlord, but we all know that there's been TFC's Ares. There is the new Kang Toys version that's coming out. There was one specific mention of Feral Rex, and I said, you know what, I'm going to count it with Predaking, but I will give the specific kind of note to Feral Rex. Actually, that's a bit of a lie. It wasn't Feral Rex. The vote actually was for Wei Jiang's Feral Rex. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Wei Jiang did do a version of it by way of Power of the Primes. Jin Bao done an oversized version of Feral Rex and Nero Rex. In fact, I looked at Nero Rex here on the channel. And all of them have their charm, have their pullbacks, have their strengths, have their weaknesses. Predaking is a dynamic character. It's an interesting character model. And when you look at the combined form, there are certain things that you absolutely expect to see. The shoulder cannons, the line head on the chest, the huge wings, even kind of like his toe cannons, I guess we'll call them. But there's a certain, and his huge sword. There's certain things that you expect to see with Predaking. And I think the success or failure of any offering of that character depends on how well they represent the things that you visually expect to see. I thought that the Unique Toys version done a great job. If you are, say, a Generations collector, he kind of fits in with Combiner Wars. Were there issues of stability here? Absolutely. Could things be done better? Sure. Do I think the Power of the Primes was a great offering? Because everybody asks me that when I talk about Generations. Yes, I do. I just thought it was a little bit too big for my personal taste. Whatever Predaking works for you, be it Feral Rex, some other third party, Power of the Primes, or even this guy, everybody can agree on one thing, that the Predacons in their huge combined mode are definitely, absolutely one of the absolute best combiners that there's ever been. And that only leaves us with 2. And number 2, in a way, is number 1 because it's the original, the very first combiner there was, that being this guy, Devastator. And there's been ever so many offerings of him. The G1 offering, there's been a couple along the way that were less successful in the Generations lines, the Classics Universe type of lines. There's the Studio Series one, there's the movie one, there's the Devil Savior movie version, which, by the way, was counted, the movie Devastator was counted as different from the G1 Devastator, and the G1 Devastator is the one that took the number 2 spot. There have been offerings from third party all across the board, perhaps Toy World's Constructor being the most famous of them. The Generation Toy offerings, and all of the KOs, and of course, the Titan class offering. There's even the downsize done by CBB, if I'm not mistaken. How could Devastator not appear on this list? How could he not be very high? I kind of thought for a little while that he was going to take number 1, because actually, for once, number 1 and number 2 were very neck and neck, and the votes were very, very close. He almost took number 1. He could have taken number 1. But no, number 1 was even a little more, I guess, of a dynamic or beloved or renowned character than this guy. But nevertheless, the first guy was bound to get a ton of votes. Him and all 6 of his glorious members take the number 2 spot. So who comes in at number 1? Maybe you can guess. And number 1, depending on the continuity that you follow and what you believe, is either the creation of Shockwave or the creation of Starscream. Either way, they're generally regarded as 5 rogues that were uncontrollable. Even Megatron put them in a Decepticon prison. That's how tough these guys were, until of course Starscream released them. Who am I talking about? This guy. It is the Combiner, made up of the Combaticons, known as the fearsome Bruticus. And there was one specific vote for Assaultus, MMC's Assaultus. I think I'm saying that name right. Besides that, everybody kind of agreed, whether it was like Warbitron, or whether it was Assaultus, or one of the other third-party MP offerings, whether it was the Unite Warriors or Combiner Wars. This is my custom Combiner Wars version. Whoever it was, they all said Bruticus, 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 except for the one vote for Assaultus, who I counted as Bruticus. Again, this could have been number 2. If Computron wasn't my number 1, this guy would have been. If Computron was my number 1, this guy would have been my number 2. I've always loved Bruticus, even if you could turn him off because of a couple of buttons on his back, which was sort of a bad design by Starscream, if you ask me. Nevertheless, fans, whether it's because they love the Combaticons, the character, or just the cool name Bruticus, because it's a fun word to say, this guy took the number 1 slot. And that's it. Another list in the books as voted on by you guys. All I did, man, was count them up and bring them to you. It's as simple as that. It was very interesting this time. A lot of times, whoever number 1 is, far and away has the most votes, but not this time. In fact, for a little while, Predaking, Devastator, and Bruticus were all kind of neck and neck. Predaking sort of fell behind as the voting went on. But Bruticus and Devastator for a long time were pretty close. Up until the end, they were fairly close, and then there was a push on for Bruticus. It is what it is. Let me know where your favorites fell, or if they even made the list at all. I appreciate you coming by and giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, don't forget there's a donate link down in the description. You can visit us on Patreon, or of course you can check out what we offer on Teespring. Don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single day, man, you do make a difference. And I look forward, man, to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres, or the old-fashioned way, baby, right here inside the videos.